Is it necessary to be a good guitar player to be a worship leader? Well, I suppose my first place of reference would have to be Scripture. Now, having said that, you don't want to discourage anyone who's just beginning, but if you look at Scripture in the book of Chronicles, King David chose Asaph and Kenaniah from amongst the Levites to train the musicians because they were skillful. And I suppose you want to encourage people who are beginning, but also make it clear that to do what we do and to take our calling seriously, we have to do just that, take it seriously. It's a bit as though, if I'm going on holiday, I don't want to get on an aeroplane which is flown by someone who sort of knows how to fly a plane a bit. And in the same way, our responsibility as worship leaders is actually as signposts to God, really. It's not about what we do. It's about facilitating worship from the congregation to God and to God from the congregation, really. So you're creating an atmosphere where people can engage with God in worship.
Yeah, I think it's important to be a good guitar player for two reasons, really. First of all, so that you're not a distraction to the people you're leading worship. And if you fluff a chord or with your right hand the rhythm goes wrong, that can completely curtail the worship set. So I think it's really important from that point of view to be at a certain standard. But secondly, and maybe more importantly for me, I think it's about remembering that a worship leader is a worshipper first and foremost, that you have to worship from your heart, from inside, that music is just a tool to express what's inside. So in a sense, the guitar, and I try and will, the guitar should just be an extension of yourself, that it's not something you've got to bolt on and think about, but it's kind of just, it's your other arm, it's your other, leg, you're going to use without thinking about it. So that's why I think it's really important to be good enough so that you're not thinking about the guitar. So it just allows you to express what's inside to God.
I don't think you have to be the best guitar player in the world. I think it's important not to be distracting, in terms of your playing. So if you can't play that well, then people are going to listen to that and they might be distracted from worshipping God. So it's important to get to a standard that enables you to think about worshipping and to not have to think about it too much. I think they're the keys, really. And then if you do happen to have a few tricks in the bag and you can bring something out, then that's great, and that can always be used to glorify God.
The more mistakes there are, the more distractions there are. It's a bit like if I write a letter to you and every second word has got a spelling mistake in it. The focus is on the mistake, not on the message that I'm trying to write. And I think it's fairly similar. We go back to that place in Scripture, particularly Chronicles and Samuel, where they talk about the call of the Levites and the worship of the temple. And it was a very skillful calling. And if you look back across the history of Western music, you've got people like Vivaldi, who was a priest. You look at Bach, who wrote on everything he ever did, Soli Deo Glorias, I think it is, or Gratias. You'll have to check that. But essentially what it meant is that everything he ever wrote, he did to the glory of God. And I think we have to do that with our playing as well.
Well, I remember when I first would lead worship, I would be so desperate for God to turn up and reliant upon him, because I was well aware of my inadequacies, and it's like, God, please let me just get through this and I'll love you forever, that kind of thing. But then as you get a bit more confident, you think, well, I know what to do, I can, I know the songs, I'm, more proficient. But actually, there's a real danger there that you learn to lead in your own strength. And hugely important part of worship is humility. And it's coming back to that place saying, God, I may be able to play the songs, but if your spirit doesn't turn up, if you don't move, if you don't reveal yourself, if you don't meet with your people, then actually all we're doing is singing a few songs. So Lord, please have mercy and use me, use us, and meet with us as your people. And I think that kind of attitude is really important, just to take a moment before you lead, just to remind yourself, God, it's really not about me, it's all about you, so please come.
In old churches you had a thing called a rood screen, R-O-O-D, not R-U-D-E. And that was simply designed because when you had this beautiful music and beautiful playing, they didn't want you to see the musicians and singers. They wanted you to worship God and to be drawn closer to God through the worship and the music. And the same with all the beautiful stained glass windows and paintings. It's all of those sorts of things. They all lead towards God.
So often I think it's easy to get stuck at the song level, at the music level. That it's almost like a false ceiling, a roof that you hit as a worship leader, rather than actually truly worship. So you get stuck at this level of, oh, I've got to get the chords right, got to get the rhythm right. What's the next line say? And it's trying to get to that point where you're not thinking about that, so that you can worship through it and lead others in that.
I think the most important thing is you can get by with a few chords, particularly with a lot of songs we play, and then one or two interesting chords. But I think rhythm's really important, particularly for these kind of songs that you really get hold of how to sort of get the strumming right so people aren't feeling like you're speeding up or slowing down.
I think most songs, the rhythm suggests itself. There's a certain feel and a mood that is fairly straightforward to identify, and your job really is to keep it consistent.
Even if you mess the chords up, as long as you keep going the rhythm, you keep everyone together. There's something driving there. Because I sometimes find if I forget a chord, I just keep strumming. I don't drop this hand. I keep going because I know that that's going to keep giving people the signal, the beat when they come in. It's often you can get the chords right, but if the rhythm's out, you're really in trouble.
I guess as a worship leader, what makes the song easy for people to sing? If you're trying a rhythm that's so complicated that kind of it makes it feel a bit uncomfortable for people to sing, then you've got to ask what's the point, because actually we're trying to, as worship leaders, make it very accessible and easy for people to join in with.